Let's go to the White House.
How that ended up there and why the president needed something like that.
So just to step back, and I'm actually glad you asked that question. Clearly, I would let the reporter for Los Angeles Times speak for herself. It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about. It is not surprising that yesterday we would anticipate questions that he did receive, right, on the visit with the South Korean president, as the South Korean president was standing to his right, or about 2024. That was completely expected, or about the debt ceiling, which he took questions at the end, shouted questions at the end, and of course we would note those issues to him. Those issues to him will likely come up, and let's not forget we do these briefings every day, and a lot of the questions that you all tell me, that's how we brief him as well. You all ask me, that's how we brief him as well. So look, we do not have specific questions in advance. That's not something that we do. And in fact, I would point out the questions that was asked was different than what was on the card that you all saw. And look, again, we have these press conferences. The president takes your questions. Our job is to get a sense of what you all want to ask him. That is our job here, to get a sense of what's the news of the day, the topics you all are interested to ask of him, and so that we are all, not just him, we are all prepared to take that seriously and to take that in a way that is going to be reported from our point of view, because we know that you all are reporting out to the American people and want to make sure you get our point of view of how we see these different issues that I even just laid out, whether it's 2024, whether it's what has been discussed or the agenda with the president of South Korea. Again, we take this very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're providing information that's helpful to you and the American people.
How are the reporters decided?
So the way that we have moved forward with this type of process is that we reach out to a number of reporters who we know are going to be at the press conference, and that's what we did yesterday. And also we try to be really mindful on who has not gotten a question in a while. And so, as you know, we could only pick 2 reporters yesterday, so that limits our ability on how many reporters we can call on. Mary's not here, but I can say one of the reasons that we picked Mary is because she was just named chief White House correspondent for ABC and had not gotten a question in some time. And we picked the Los Angeles Times, which has not gotten a question in some time. And I want to add that the fact that California has the largest South Korean American population in any state in the country, and LA has the biggest population of any city in America, and LAT is the biggest daily paper serving that population. So we are mindful on who we pick and who we want to communicate out to. And so that's how we move forward with Mary and Courtney. We thought that is pretty reasonable, wanting to, as we have the South Korean president with us during this press conference, because we wanted to also communicate with the Korean American. So that's usually how we move this process forward.
I'm sorry.
Is it your contention, Karine?
I'm not taking call.
That the question that was on the so-called cheat sheet was not similar to the question that was asked at the press conference.
Your colleague is not done. Go ahead.
It's a very reasonable question.
No, but I hear you. Can you wait your turn? Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I really do. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
And just to be clear, to people, skeptics who saw the card and saw the question number 1 and might think that is a signal that it was pre-organized. Did the president have other questions that he was prepared, had similar talking points in case he was asked something on other topics in that same?
Jacqui, I'm going to be, as someone who was part of his of the prep briefing with the president for these press conferences as his press secretary, we talk about an array of topics that could potentially come up, and that's what we do. Just at the end, there was shouted questions, and he took those shouted questions. But we also had a sense that, hey, you might get something on a debt ceiling, which makes a lot of sense, which is one of the news of the day. So we cover an array of topics. It's not just the 2 Americans who asked questions. It was also the 2 South Korean reporters who asked questions. So we do our best to make sure that the president is ready to communicate with all of you and the American people. So yeah, we covered an array of issues. But of course, there are probably the top 3, top 5 topics, hot items that you all are interested in. And so that's kind of how we move forward.
And the last one, just on that shouted question that he did respond to on the debt ceiling, having heard your response to the questions that were answered already here today, you've had now Democrats saying that Republicans have come to the table, might not like what they came to the table with, but it's time for the dialogue. How long can this posture from the president last before it feels like intellectually dishonest to say, they're holding the economy hostage and not raising the debt ceiling when they did pass a bill to raise the debt ceiling, and the argument's really about the budget cuts, the spending cuts, and not about whether or not the debt ceiling gets raised.
So I have to say, Jacqui, I disagree with the intellectually dishonest. That is certainly not how we see ourselves here, because we've been very, very clear that they need to deal with the debt ceiling. They need to not default. It is a constitutional duty. And again, this is not to us. This is to the American people. If you think
without conditions, unless it's a clean bill, they won't.
I've been very clear. Without conditions, we will not negotiate. There's nothing new there. What you're seeing that the House Republicans have done is they said that unless the president, and I've said this before, this is nothing new that I'm about to say, unless the president and the Senate agree to an extreme MAGA wish list, slashing education, veterans health care, Meals on Wheels, taking away health care from millions of Americans, and sending manufacturing jobs overseas, they're going to default and crash the economy. We've said this over and over and over again and been very clear. The president does not agree with this bill. He believes, and we believe, and the American people deserve this, that they need to do their constitutional duty. They need to do this so that they are not holding the economy, our American economy hostage. We cannot be a deadbeat nation. We cannot be.
No meeting unless it's a clean debt bill.
We've been very clear about this. We've been very, very clear. I appreciate the question.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.